So why am I doing this? I'm starting this podcast because we all have a story and finances play a part in our struggles and successes. If we can learn from the many mistakes many others have made, we can make sure that more of us are successful. Like the quote says, to increase the chances of success, we must increase our failure rate. To be honest, I failed a ton. I will bring people from all walks of life, but mostly service members. If you have a story you would like to share, do not hesitate to reach out. From the go, like and subscribe to this podcast so many others can benefit. Here we are in the next episode of the Financial Enabler podcast, and this time we have Eric Maertens, a SEER specialist. He's a active guard reserve, and he's also a financial expert. So I'm stoked to hear from you. And before I started with this podcast, as I told everybody, we're going to be throwing shout outs to units 8141. So MARSOC, 1st Battalion, 4th Company, so Del Taco, and then first team. So next team's up. Keep sending your shirts. We're going to throw them up. So how you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, I'm stoked, dude. Yeah, dude. So you're a SEER specialist. You're AGR now. Where were you? What was your time in the active Air Force? Where have you been?
So I was, all SEER guys go through Fairchild Air Force Base up in Spokane, Washington. And so that's where the big schoolhouse is. So we spent 4 years there, which I did. And then I moved on to Charleston Air Force Base. Air Force has continuation SEER training. So I did that at Charleston. Out of Charleston, I joined the Guard in Memphis, Tennessee. And then I joined the unit up at Buckley. Still AGR. Still a SEER guy. Been in for 15 years.
Do you, what do you like the most of being a SEER specialist?
I get to think. There's a lot of, So there's a lot of jobs in the military that aren't as dynamic. Like once you get to a certain skill level, it's kind of like training the next skill level and management. And I have to, especially when I go to the field and do field training, it requires a lot of thinking on the fly, dynamic thinking, because when you're operating in a field environment, it's way different than the classroom, obviously. So you got to worry about students' health and what are they retaining and all these kind of things. So it keeps me on my toes and it's not boring.
And I just thought of this. I had never correlated because, we always think about field craft, Marines and Army field craft. But in reality, SEER specialists, you literally thrive in field craft, right? You thrive in you probably spend more time in the field than I have. And for that matter, I hate the field. So I'll say it. That's not my jam.
I mean, I'm always, I've suffered enough in my military career. So when I train other people, there's a certain balance I like to strike. I'm always like, why suffer if you don't need to? So like what I'm trying to teach them is how to thrive and not, because anybody would know, I was like, hey, if you go out to the woods with no tent, with food for 3 days, it's going to be miserable. Yeah. You can experience it or I can just tell you. But a lot of it is like practical, like technical skills that the pilots, because I'm teaching injectors, F-16s, and it's technical skills that they don't really think about much until they need it, and then it becomes a huge priority, especially as tension heats up with near peers. So, we do spend a lot of time in the field. That's probably my favorite, another part of my job.
What was the name of the communications thing that you guys use? The pilots, the CCEL. It's really funny. My ex is a rescue pilot. Again, I'll always say it, she's a badass. And it was very funny to me to realize how pilots are so unfamiliar with CCELs and field craft. And I'm like, dude, you're going to get shot down in the next war. Maybe not this one, but the next one you're going to get shot down. So it was just shocking, right? And the dilemma that, as rescue pilots, they dealt with, that they master the CCEL and it's easy, but I can only imagine what it's like to convince an F-22 pilot. It's like, hey, buddy, this is really important for you. It's like, yeah, whatever. I'm here for my weekly training.
Yeah, I try to blend, like, I kind of understand where they're coming from because any ancillary training I need to do, I'm kind of like, all right, let's get this over with. So I try to make it applicable. But like one of the things I talk about is obviously priority is keep the airplane in the air. So you don't need any of this if you keep the airplane in the air. But all of a sudden it comes priority number one. And if your first time mentally rehearsing it is under canopy in the air, like, I just checked it, I don't know what I'm doing. Then adrenaline kicks in, and all these easy things like the CSO radio, which are pretty easy to use. Probably don't read the instruction manual on your iPhone. It's easier to use than that, but their adrenaline's flowing. So then they make all kinds of mistakes like people do when it's their first time playing, and it's a big game.
And all of a sudden in the big show, and you what is it? You drown under pressure, right? So it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But cool, man. So let me ask you, what rank are you? Because it's always interesting to me to Air Force how hard it is for you guys to get promoted.
It's a little easier than the guard, or in the guard. They say as long as you can follow the mirror, you can promote in the guard. But
cool. So you're actually much higher than many. Because I've noticed that, and I've been joking about this with some of my friends, how like the Air Force takes care of you guys, but they're like, here, we're going to take care of you. Here's this gear, but we're not going to promote you.
Yeah, promoting has notoriously been harder, and it's even harder now in active duty in the Air Force.
Yeah.
So, it has a lot to do with retention too. So it's hard. It's definitely harder. Now you can retire, I think, as an E5 in the Air Force.
Wow.
So you can do 20 years.
That sounds not my jam. No. We will both disagree financially. That is not a good move. Please just get out at 15 and go start over a career. You'll be better off.
Yeah.
So cool, man. And I saw that, we found each other on social media. You have a YouTube channel. Do you have a podcast too, right? Not yet.
No, just YouTube channel. I'm gonna start linking it via podcast. I want to start interviewing people.
So this will be both on
just YouTube,
on your YouTube's, my YouTube podcast. What drove you to start talking about finances to people?
Well, really, I'm kind of a macro geek. I was a personal finance geek for a long time. I went down the Dave Ramsey trail and then Robert Kiyosaki trail. And there's things I agree with, disagree with both of them. But the main one was I started talking about macro because I saw the stock market going up and to the right when everyone was staying home in 2020. And I started scratching my head going, how is this possible? Started digging into how the Federal Reserve works. I've always thought our national debt is an issue, but I never knew like the meat and potatoes, like why is it an issue and when will it stop? Because debt, everyone knows debt's bad. So federal debt, it's got to be bad too, right? So what does it mean? What does it mean to you and me? So I started digging into that. And then ultimately I came to a conclusion, if we're talking national security, our debt's probably our biggest threat. And so I'm not the only one who thinks this. It was the Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I'm blanking on his name right now. It'll come to me. But it was in 2013 when Obama was president, and we had $13 trillion in debt. He said our national debt is our biggest national security threat. Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff said this. We have since tripled it. So it was a big deal then. It's 3 times the deal now. And I want to let people know that who's going to get screwed is the little guy. Who's going to get screwed?
The
military. When it comes to their pay, how they're treated, and the trends going on. I kind of want them to know specifically, the little guy to know that there's things happening in the background that are ruining or devaluing your life.
And it's interesting. I try to harp on this because we've seen a few mentions of attacks on the VA system, and I'm in my mind, I'm like, it's not safe. Like the fact that so many of our peers rely on that VA disability, that pension, it's almost a crutch. Like, again, that's something that I believe wholeheartedly Kiyosaki's right on. The pension is almost like our yearly bonus, not our income plan, right? But to many, it's their income plan. So it's not good, right? Because at any moment, the Congressional Budget Office can change their mind. And it's interesting because the previous podcast was with the cognitive rater, and we talk a lot about finance and maneuver finance. And we talk how the correlations between the warfare and finance. And here you are talking about debt and national security. It's all correlated. They're all very similar once we dive into it, right? You're dealing with a threat. How do you react to the threat? How do you prepare for the threat, right? Dealing with your COAs. And funny, I brought this book. I did not expect we were going to go here. But one of the, oh my God, I just forgot to say, Comptroller General of the United States, David Walker. Have you ever read this book, The Power of Zero? The Power of Zero, guys? Dude,
No,
phenomenal book because it talks about that. Like, if our debt keeps increasing and our obligations keep going out, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security until it falters, then you throw in COVID, Ukraine, so on and so forth. It gets worse and worse and worse. So the reaction, what they are saying is that the only way to fix this is increase taxes. So as soon as 2026, when Trump's law expires, taxes are going to start going up, and who's going to suffer? Those people that have all their money in taxable and tax-deferred accounts. All of a sudden, somebody retiring in 2027, he has $2 million in the 401k, and they're going to be like, here's a massive tax bill. He's going to be like, whoa, what happened, And it's very interesting. So you dove into the macro side. I'm more of my personal finance. That's really what I focus on. But clearly the macro is what leads to these personal reactions and how we got to prepare. So what would you say as you dove into the macro? What is your main concern and how are you protecting from it?
So I like to take it down, like to a personal finance level, because people understand credit card debt, people understand home debt. And so let's imagine you bought a home in 2011, and that was at the bottom, near the bottom of the market, and the price on the home kept going up and up and up. And every year you were able to cash out refi. So you were able to pull out money at a lower interest rate. Therefore, your payment stayed the same. Now, what happens if that interest rate was variable? And so you think interest rates, your entire bet is that interest rates will remain low forever. That's what Washington bet on with our national debt. So kind of the plumbing of the system is we have taxes, which is income for the government. And I would say a generous estimate from the Congressional Budget Office is that we're going to have a $2 trillion deficit. So we take in about $4 trillion in taxes, and that ebbs and flows based off the economy. $4 trillion in taxes, we spend $6 trillion.
Wow.
So, and that number's going up. So how do we spend that extra $2 trillion? We spend that through selling something called the Treasury. So the Treasury goes out to the open market and says, hey, who wants to buy American debt? And traditionally, for the last decade plus, actually, interest rates have been going lower and lower and lower. But we were at zero. We were at zero during COVID, nearly zero. So like if you were borrowing money from the Treasury, you were getting paid like 0.25%. So you were lending them money for a period of time, 2 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. Now interest rates are going up. So what does that mean? There is no way out of this. There is no way. So this is called a doom loop or debt doom loop. And nearly every Western country is in the same position, by the way. So like you said, their only option is to raise taxes. That's one. And that's really not an option. All that does is put a Band-Aid, and it leads to discontent. And there's a certain law of diminishing returns when it comes to raising taxes. If you've ever heard of, what is it called? Some kind of curve. I can't now. But it's a tax curve, essentially. Like if you go over that curve and you're starting to tax people more, you're actually getting less in taxes because the economy slows down. So there's a law of diminishing return with taxes, and we're already there, by the way, when it comes to how much people are taxed. So they can raise taxes, they can cut spending, or they can print. They are going to print. But they really need that printing to be at a lower interest rate than inflation. And the problem is Social Security, Medicare, military retirements, VA benefits are all pegged to inflation. So what I foresee happening is there's one guarantee I'll give you. There is no way of getting out of the debt. There's no way. So if there's no way of doing it, what's the politically expedient thing? Printing. That's what they're going to do. Imagine trying to get elected in today's world by saying, we're going to cut Social Security by 20%. Not happening. Not happening. So you'll get paid. But one of the things I was talking to you about earlier is if you zoom out and you ask yourself, what is money? Money, you don't even want money. You want
the money that you get when you buy that. Yeah.
Right. so it's not even the token or the currency unit itself. If Chuck E. Cheese tokens bought you stuff, then you would want Chuck E. Cheese tokens. So, but why is the dollar valuable? That's something that's it's a simple question, but it's very important. It's all trust.
Mm-hmm.
It is all trust. And that trust is very fleeting. It's trust around the world and it's trust within the United States. So that trust slowly is breaking down as people's purchasing power is going away. And hyperinflation happens when people just go, I don't want to use this anymore. As soon as I get paid, I dump this thing for something else, whatever that is. It could be for goods and services, could be for another currency. And I don't think that's going to happen like immediately, but I don't think inflation's going down. And by hedging, and this is something very specific to military, you get paid, especially if you're retiring or you're going to have a VA benefit of some kind. That benefit is solely dependent on the intelligence and fiscal responsibility of Congress.
Big gamble.
So if you understand that, yes, if you understand that, then you understand they ain't responsible. And it's not saying it's going to go away because that's politically unpalatable, but they'll pay you. They'll pay you, but it will buy you half as much. So they're not supposed to pay you purchasing power. They're supposed to pay in dollars, right? So that's kind of how they're going to work it out. I like to buy right now, specifically thinking about that. If I'm wrong, then this is a hedge. That's why I hedge with things like gold, silver, and Bitcoin. And we can get into that if you want to more specifically. But you in the military are paid and have that trust in that system. So if that system fails you and you're investing in something like government treasuries, which, by the way, DOD employees hold $1.1 trillion in government treasuries. So if you're a TSP investor and you say, I was told to invest in a TSP, guess where it went? If you didn't allocate it correctly, it went to government bonds.
G fund.
So not only are you relying on them there, you're also relying on them with your savings. So if we're thinking about risk here, like you have a golden ticket kind of with your pension and VA benefit and medical for the rest of your life. If that goes away and you're investing in something that is also tied to the solvency of the U.S. government,
big
you have a problem.
Yeah. Let me ask you, do you still invest in TSP? You don't?
I don't.
Okay. But that's also, you're in the legacy system. If you were in BRS, would you?
Yep.
You would? Okay.
I would.
That makes sense. The match is huge. I'm investing in it, which I just recently found like the coolest strategy. I'm going to share this with you. You just move around according to a system. I'll share it with you. It's pretty cool. But I also am planning on leaving. I retire in a year and I'm pulling it out in a year. So I'm not going to rely on the, yeah, I'm so stoked. So stoked. Which I think that one thing I just recently heard, and I want people don't grasp the magnitude of the numbers, right? 1 million and 1 billion, how broad that number is. I don't even want to look up a trillion because I don't want to throw up. But the difference between 1 million seconds is 12 days. 1 million seconds is 12 days, while 1 billion second is 31 years. So that magnitude in dollars is so vast. And then once you get into trillions, it's continuous compounding. People just don't get that, right? So like you said, and we're saying, I believe that taxes are going to go up because as they, print more money, they have to raise taxes. And it's very easy to say they're going to cut spending until we're in a war. And then we have to increase spending. And then we're going to go back to, food rationing, whatever, which is what we have to do, right? That's what a nation at war has to do. And we have to be prepared for that because, while it's very easy, this is what I think is going to happen. Trump's law expires in 2026. The re-election is in 2024. So whoever is in office in 2026 is going to be like, Trump's fault, which is fine, right? Raise taxes, blame it on the other guy. Yeah. Not his fault. He is protected for re-election, which is their problem, right? And again, who's going to suffer the most? You and I, right? Well, maybe not you and I, but people in our socioeconomic circle, right? And we have to do, and I think that to the audience, what Eric and I are doing is really, it's not about us getting rich. Because if it was about us getting rich, we wouldn't have this platform. It's about us sharing what we know to help you protect some wealth. So when all this happens, we're not all screwed over, right? We want to get more of our friends and families to be wealthier. And it's a big movement, and it's going to take a lot of work, but it's worth every second of it, right? Wow, dude, I like it. I'm not a macro guy, so this is great. What would you say is a great book about macroeconomics that someone that knows nothing about macroeconomics should read? Or macro finance?
There's a long one, but Intro to Economics, maybe not that one. Number one,
subscribe to the channel. Yeah. What was the name of your podcast? The channel again?
Above my pay grade. Let's see. One book that is really not about Bitcoin, it's about macro, and it has why Bitcoin's valuable, is the Bitcoin Standard. And
the Fiat Standard.
There's another book, same author, Fiat.
Dude, great books. I read both of them, and so it's funny. I did not know that those were about macro, which I totally believe in Bitcoin. I am not as invested in it, but I believe in it. I think that maybe this is a general term, right? There's people that say that. I get one of my things is that I do not like when people say that X asset class is a silver bullet, right? When people say life insurance is the only way. Kiyosaki claims real estate is the only way, which it's not. He doesn't say that. That is just where he has the majority of his money in the public's eye. Stocks is not it. Gold's not it. Crypto's not it. The reality is that you have to have a little bit of everything, which I don't have much gold. Actually, I don't have any. We need to continue to put some dollars at every single bucket, hopefully in a tax-exempt vehicle, because if not, we're going to end up in a bad place, right? And
gold you can substitute for pretty much any. So one thing that I want to caution people on, specifically here in the United States, you can substitute gold for any hard commodity, anything that's rare, anything that can't be printed. There are about 40% of companies in the stock market, specifically in the NASDAQ, that are not profitable. They're called zombie companies. Their entire existence relies on cheaper debt, hoping to gain a profit.
Right.
So, and they are way overvalued. So there's a lot of companies out there that produce productive things and they have free cash flow. Great. That's rare. They're not printing more shares, right? They're not devaluing their shares. So great. That's a rare thing. But the thing I try to get through to people is the dollar. I agree with you. There is no panacea. They're not going to say, hey, you know what? This fixes everything. And all you got to do is put your money in here. It's definitely good to diversify. But if you don't understand that the dollar, to put in perspective how much we owe, each taxpayer owes $250,000 in this country on a national debt. So then you're like, oh, wow. And you might think to yourself, a lot of people do, wait, we've been printing money for a while. What's the big deal now? We hit the gas pedal in 2020. And there is a point at which your interest payment on that debt becomes so behemothly large. And therefore, since you have a large interest payment, you have to take on more debt just to pay interest. And therefore, your interest payment goes up again. That's the debt spiral. Now, to put that in perspective, our interest payment alone is going to be more than the most powerful military in the world's budget this year. We're going to pay more on interest only on our debt than we pay for the U.S. military. So it's getting out of control, and it's only going to get bigger because interest rates are going up because people don't trust the dollar. So if they don't trust the dollar, they say, hey, if I'm going to buy a treasury, I don't want 1%. I want 5%. I want 6%. I want something other than this measly 1% because you're printing your currency and you're inflating it away. So that is a for sure thing. Timing is not, but the math is certain. We cannot get out of the problem unless you grow out of it. And you think our economy is going to grow at 10% a year? It never has. Why would it magically do it?
No, we could band-aid this, and I guess theoretically we could solve it with a very frugal leadership, like that father that says, "Buddies, kids, we're gonna eat ramen noodles, and you can go play with grass outside, no toys," right? And it would take 100 years, 150 years, right? Not in maybe more, right? Not in our existence. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like over time,
guess what? And I totally agree with you. But all you got to do is look at France. What's going on in France right now? They've been promised something. Macron tried to take it away. He tried to raise the retirement age, basically their Social Security, and they are rioting in the streets. So people don't take too kindly because they don't have these conversations. So all they look at is this binary choice. You can retire at 64 or 62, right? But even if they knew all the truth is that they couldn't afford it and yada, 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 they don't trust that their governments are going to take that saved money and do something responsible with it. They think they're going to go on some kind of boondoggle and spend it on butterfly gender theory or whatnot. So they're like, hey, you better spend it on, because I paid into it. So, and it doesn't, it typically devolves into chaos when this happens because the government's faced with a hard choice. Do you want inflation or do you want your benefits? Because you can't have both.
But one thing that it's interesting you say about the dollar in France is that as we see more countries make alliances with China, all of a sudden this national debt, people don't trust our dollar, people ally with China, then at what point does France leave? Are they part of Five Eye? Yeah. At what point does the France say, we are buddies with China now, America, you're not it, right?
Well, what's in their self-interest? And not just self-interest,
it's survival.
Because, yes, so what does America have? The most powerful military in the world. We don't export much other than the dollar. We export social media, the dollar, that's about it. The reason we do that is because our currency is the best. As in, if you look at something called the DXY, which is the dollar compared to other currencies, ours holds the most value today. That's going to change. But it makes it very difficult to export if you have such a high-performing currency. Very difficult. That's why you've seen, so it's a blessing and a curse to have the world reserve currency, because where did all of our jobs go? Why'd they go overseas? We were a manufacturing powerhouse in the 1950s. Where did they go? We couldn't compete with cheaper currencies like the yen, the yuan, and so we offshored everything. And we've been living off of other people's labor around the world, being able to export our inflation. And that is changing very rapidly, like you said, with China. The BRICS nations, I'm sure you've heard of that, the alliances going on. It's not going to happen overnight. There's still a lot of reliance on the U.S. dollar. But our quality of life in the United States is going to change drastically.
Oh, yeah. We need to be prepared, right? The lavish life, just like, military 10 years ago, military now, things are tight, right? And for the people watching, the BRICS are Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, right? So when you...
And by the way, Mexico is looking to join them as well.
So these are the countries that are aligned and they're growing, and not that they directly pose a threat to us, they're just economic powers, right?
They're trying to compete with the dollar.
But yeah, totally. So excellent, dude. That's man, you're very wise. We're gonna have to. We're gonna keep talking more. We're going to an event next week in Denver, which I'm mega stoked.
Yeah,
it's gonna be. We're gonna talk about it. It's different, but we're gonna talk a lot about money. And there's some. If anything, one thing that I feel that is lacking, and I'll invite any military person, is that you heard of the saying that your net worth is the equivalent of everybody around you. Your quality of who you are, so you surround yourself. And that's one part of that group, right? I just wanted to, they knocked on my door and I was like, I want to be part of this circle, right? To increase my net worth. Yeah. But let me ask you a question about you. So with your military career, as a SEER specialist, is there anything that you got in the military career that has helped you with your finances to make you more financially savvy?
I would say I can see, as I've been in for a while, like I've become more dependent on the system. Like, I'm a constitutionalist. And kind of the nature of the military is this, like, you're in the system, right? And so you go through the wickets, and then you get these golden handcuffs after a certain amount of time. You're like, well, I better retire. And it can become a mentally degrading thing. Not like your brain atrophies after a while, because you're not thinking dynamically. You're just kind of like punching the time card kind of thing. And so that motivated me to not be dependent on the system. And I've always been nervous about not having savings. Like, it literally made my skin crawl. If I was like, even if I didn't have debt, but I was just like paycheck to paycheck. And I've read books like The Millionaire Next Door and the habits of people who are millionaires in this country, meaning $1 million of net worth. It'd surprise you how much money they make. It's blue collar living. It's lower middle class. It's not people who make 250,000 plus, because their lifestyle creep goes up with their income, right? And then part of that independence journey was started reading about things. I don't know if you're familiar with the 4% rule in the FIRE community, financial independence, retire early. Financial independence to me is being able to do what I want with my time. So I just started going on that path. And it's definitely been rewarding. Like, there's definitely parts of the military where I'm like, some days I'm just like, I just want to leave. And that kind of motivates me to, like, hey, prepare yourself for.
And I think I'm gonna try to bring something back that I said earlier, that I can't wait to retire. And I don't want anybody in this audience to, and I think you're also not saying this. We're not saying leave the military. We're not saying we had a bad time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm beyond grateful for what I've had, to meeting people, the experiences. But it's closer to our time. So now we're more excited to leave, right? Yeah. But it can be very rewarding. So that's great what you're saying with that. And I have a theory, and we talk a lot about it, how people are so focused about paying for debt. And this is one of the things that I'm not a Ramsey guy. I think he has great concepts, but not all of them. But if you focus exclusively on paying for debt and you have no savings, you're just going from in debt to broke, not in debt to wealthy, right? And then you're missing out on the time value of money, which is a whole different calculation that people don't account for. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I wish I could stop people from doing is being in a rush to pay low interest loans. I'm like, especially during inflation. I'm like, you have a 2% loan on a car. I'm like, don't pay for it too fast. Slow down. Put it in a 4% account. Compound your money. I know it's kind of, or your house, right?
It's like, your house is not a good piggy bank.
It's not again, a Kiyosaki point that I think he's right. Your house is not an asset. The house that you currently live in. So it's how we take all these concepts and put them together, because we are unusually fortunate in the benefits, right? And people don't get that. I was like, and I'm gonna throw a few. VA loan and medical. Granted, is our medical great? No. But right now, I could literally drive all the way to your house right now and snap your leg off. You would be like, oh, dang, that hurts. And you would just drive to the hospital. You wouldn't even worry about it. You don't even care where the money's coming from. Yeah. But in the civilian world, breaking your leg is a massive, massive stressor. You know, you hear all the time, oh, like, I'll never take an ambulance ride. And this is really funny, just in January, I got super sick and I had to take an ambulance ride. And I remember laying in the ambulance, I was like, I wonder if TRICARE covers this. I'm like, I don't care. They'll figure it out. And they did. I never got billed. It was just like done. Yeah. And that is not the norm.
And that's for the rest of your life if you retire. That's more beneficial than the pension.
Right. And people take that for granted. So it's like, if you're going to have 3 months saving, 3 months of income saved for you and I is very different than a civilian guy, because he has to factor in medical expenses. He has to factor in the highest interest rate possible on an FHA. Well, you and I have VA loans. It's like, it's such a massive leg up just because we committed a few years to the military, you know, and we take that for granted. So, yeah, man, that's awesome. So what would you say is the best financial advice that you got in your journey?
One of them we were talking about earlier, saving is behavior and investing is knowledge. So first, you got to get the behavior down. You need free cash flow. Like, you shouldn't be reading investing books if you don't have money at the end of the month. Like, what's the point? So side hustle, save more, cut. But you don't, especially in an inflationary environment, especially with what we talked about earlier, you are not going to, as you take a step forward, they're taking 3/4, if not a whole step back when it comes to printing money, meaning devaluing your labor. So if you're saving, that's all you're doing. It looks like you saved $100 because it still said 100 in your bank account, but you were thinking of $100 and what it purchased you 2 years ago. And what it purchases you today, it's two different things, right? So investing is really not too cosmic. Like, you don't, a lot of people and financial advisors will talk to people and use large acronyms, and then they're like, okay, dude, what are you talking about? And like the Zoom we were on the other day, like, financial advisors do that so they can have a little cut, right?
Yeah.
They want to keep
The nominal 1%. Nominal.
Yes, obscure the truth. They start talking about ETFs and bonds, and you're like, dude, I don't have time for this. I got to work, and I get it. And investing has become more complicated because of derivatives and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, do you put money in things that have free cash flow and that are profitable and are rare? If you do that, they're probably going to go up in value if people want to buy them. And it can obviously get more complicated than that, but like Warren Buffett, he bought Coca-Cola.
Tried and true, right? The guy literally could sell everything, and except to keep just a small fraction of his Coca-Cola, and he'll still never have to work. And it's totally true. And I think that you're getting to something with, the savings behavior and investing is knowledge, that we end up in a paralysis by analysis because we're getting all this knowledge about investing, real estate, asset classes, and put your money here, put your money there. This is bad. This is good. When in reality, it's about concepts. It's not even about, in reality, you don't have to go be a stock picker. You can throw your money at a few indexes. Yeah. You're probably going to be fine. You can throw your money in a few houses and a few life insurance policies and X amount of gold, X amount of Bitcoin. You're probably going to be better off than what you're doing by being scared and not taking that minor leap. And people think that I need hundreds of dollars. I'm like, dude, you need $10 a week. If we could convince every single E3 to put $10 into any of those asset classes, they would probably be better off. Guaranteed. Mm-hmm. But they over-exaggerate and they think that we're dealing with some massive concept that only this, and I fell victim to it, and this is a great friend, was my financial advisor, not a great friend, a family friend. And I recently left because I realized how simple it was, and I didn't want to pay him his nominal fee, and I felt victim because I wanted to do that. I'm like, I want to keep going to work and not worry about it. And then I'm like, I paid him how much? I almost threw up, right? So it's a big step, and we welcome to people to reach out to you, reach out to me, and I'm sure that we're here to help, right? What would you say is the worst financial advice you ever got?
Well, I would say there's a lot of fear, finances go in a cycle, fear and greed. And so I would say I kind of gave myself this advice. But, I've been into crypto for a while, but one of the new things is stable coins, which is $1 on the blockchain. So this can sound cosmic and kind of Ponzi scheme to a lot of people, but there's all these stable coins, and there's a lot of companies offering yield. So I was like, hey, cool. I'm going to put some money with these companies that offer yield. What's the worst that can happen? They can go bankrupt. That's what they can do.
Luna, right?
So, no, I wasn't with Terra Luna. I was with Voyager.
Me too.
So it's a pretty,
dude,
really?
I lost not lost. Yeah. It's coming back. We're getting it back though. We're getting some of it back.
Yeah. But yeah. But so if something sounds too good to be true, so the way I rationalized it in my mind, they were offering 9% interest. And it wasn't like a fly by night, company, right? The guy who ran it used to run E-Trade. He wasn't like an idiot. But they were offering 9%. And then they said, hey, there's a proprietary way that we get this 9%. Obviously, they're loaning it out. That made sense to me. But there's obviously risk involved. If somebody's offering you 9% interest, there is risk. And if that trade goes the other way for Voyager, they're SOL. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, dude. And so for anybody that is here, we both had Voyager. I had also a staking on the stable coin and the USD coin that they had, and with the VGX. And I was super excited. I was like, oh, it doesn't matter that it's tanking. I'll just keep getting my interest. I'll be fine a few years from now. And then all of a sudden, poof, gone. Like you said, the one thing that was good about Voyager is that it was properly ran, that they made a big mistakes with Alameda. Unfortunately, Binance did buy it. Unlike FTX, nobody's buying FTX, right? So
but there's a lot of like Fugazi stuff that goes on with crypto companies where you're like, okay, so I assume this company's on the up and up. Like Sam Bankman-Fried with FTX was meeting with the SEC, was going to Washington. Most people look at him and like, oh, he's advertising on the Super Bowl. Must be legit. Like he was straight up running a Ponzi scheme. So like you paid him money to buy Bitcoin. He didn't buy the Bitcoin. He took the money. And then he had on his books, he had a Bitcoin IOU for you. So it's the Wild West, the crypto markets. Bitcoin is different for a lot of reasons, but crypto as a whole is the Wild West. And so when you put money with a company, there's a lot of good ideas out there. Stable coins aren't a Ponzi scheme. They're used around the world. But if it sounds too good to be true.
Where are you buying your Bitcoin now, if you can share?
Swan. So you can dollar cost average is the way I do it. I'm price agnostic. So I just put a certain amount every month. And Swan's pretty user friendly. And then it auto withdrawals to my cold storage wallet.
If you don't mind teaching me that, because that's what I want to start doing. Yeah, because like I want it out.
Yeah, and in fact, when we're together, I'll show you why I think Bitcoin's valuable in person with our phones.
And I want to see that because the extent of my knowledge about crypto, besides being very excited for the percentage that I was getting on Voyager, is that after I lost all that money in Voyager, I couldn't access it for however long, I read the Bitcoin Standard, and I was like, and for that matter, I think that we're going to get a lot of our Bitcoin back. I don't know the other companies. I think it's going to be much harder. But I totally believe in Bitcoin, and I want to start doing that. But I want to hear that because to me, the whole saliency and time, access, how it works, the proper system, and going from Bitcoins to Satoshis, I think it's legit. So now I just want to learn to maximize it and get it into cold storage instead of leaving it into Voyager and run those risks, which it is a risk, right?
Oh, yeah. That's the only way. Like the reason Bitcoin exists is so you don't use a third-party intermediary. So you don't need Voyager. But, I always tell people comparing Bitcoin and crypto, because Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, air quotes, but it's like comparing a Pinto and a Ferrari. It's like they're both cars, but a different class in what they do and what they're capable of and why one's valuable versus the other one.
Big difference. And I think that the author of that book explains it very well. And it's, again, Bitcoin standard or fiat standard is very important to realize it as to how we solve this. And I think most nations are realizing that, especially with the lack of trust in the dollar. And this is something that I want our audience to grasp, that nothing is in a silo, right? Like the dollar trust is not only going to affect dollar trust, it's going to affect Bitcoin dollars, Bitcoin cost, real estate cost, French real estate cost, even in Uganda is going to suffer, right? In the same way with asset classes, like saying that, we want to go back to what I said earlier, is that nothing is a silver bullet. They all affect each other. They have symbiotic relationships, and that's what we got to properly access all of them, which this, like one of the ones that real estate. I think the only people love real estate is because you can touch it. You cannot touch Bitcoin, right? It's not there. You can leverage, right?
It. You can leverage real estate.
It's funny. People don't know how to leverage stocks, where you use which is margin, pulling out margin loans. Totally normal. Right. A lot of the wealthy do it. But they don't know how to use that because it's such a foreign, untangible that people gravitate towards real estate, but it's not the silver bullet. And it's not going to bail you out whenever the American dollar tanks, you know?
Yeah, it's better than holding dollars. Like if it's free cash flow in an inflation environment or not, it's better than holding cash. Like it's a business that makes money, and people need a place to live. But like you said, like to say in a blanket statement, you should buy real estate. About 40% of all Airbnbs on the market today were bought in 2020, 2021, and 2022. That height of the market. So what kind of profit do those people have to make? A big one, right? So what do people cut during a recession? Travel. So what is going to happen to these Airbnbs that people were like, hey, it's a big business. They want to get into real estate. The cash flow on Airbnb, like if a property only cash flowed because it was an Airbnb and you could charge a nightly rate, what happens when Airbnb demand goes down? Well, you got to sell all those houses. So there's some risk. It's understanding, like I'm very much a dollar bear. Like the dollar is going to go down in value compared to assets, not necessarily compared to other currencies, but compared to eggs, compared to housing, compared to literally everything you buy. That is the trend. Because there is no way out of the debt but print it out.
It's the only way.
So what happens when more currency units chase fewer goods and services?
Yeah, I get it. So let me ask you this, because I'm always interested about goals, right? Because, people think, often a lot of people I see think that you have to create money and you got to create a plan before you create a goal. But then the wealthy see it opposite. They create a goal and then they're like, it just happens, right? What are your goals in life for the future?
I'd like to find it, like, my wife gets 2 votes. Her vote counts as 2, and I kind of just want. But I've been trying to convince her to buy like a plot of land out Wyoming, out west, like Idaho, after I retire. I'd like to run my own business. I know, like, one thing's for sure: I do not want to work for the government anymore. So I know what I don't want to do, which is work for the government. I'd like to run my own business, and I'd like to be as financially independent as possible once I leave the military. Meaning, I can survive without a job, and therefore I can use the creative part of my brain. Because when you have to think about surviving and making money, you can be a lot less creative with your time if you're trying to be an entrepreneur, because you're trying to, put out fires and play whack-a-mole. Versus, if your basic needs are taken care of, you could take risk. Therefore,
when sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, I'm kind of up in the air because I think the future is kind of like some of the stuff we're talking about. I think we're going to see a lot of change over the next 5-10 years. And so who knows, to be honest with you, I just want to be as in control of my financial future that I can be, understanding there's certain things outside of my control, but I don't just want to be like, hey, Washington has it because they're going to pay me a pension.
Can't wait to get that pension. Yeah. Which again, nothing bad with it. Just don't depend on it and expect it as like I hope that more people that listen to our podcast and our YouTube channels, whenever you retire, you get a pension, either be prepared to be financially independent and do something good with that pension and the disability. Not just say, oh man, I'm so glad I can pay for my X bills with this. This is how you should be: climbing out of debt, investing it into asset class.
People die after they retire because of that reason. They kind of are like, all right, I'm done. And they shut their brain off. But I was looking into the pension because the military is one of those things that I'm like free market, capitalistic kind of guy. I'm like, what would happen if they did away with the pension? And do you know the military pension's been around since 1789. So military pensions are pretty ubiquitous throughout the world because there's something that, same with fire and police, because there's something that those jobs do to your body that people wouldn't sign up to do unless there was some kind of financial protection involved in that job. So there's always been, since 1775, there's always been some kind of VA coverage. But the pension's been around since basically the founding of our country.
And it's one of the few lasting pensions. which leads to one of my big gripes that as of late is that companies don't have pensions because they're not affordable. And instead of them assuming the risk, they put it on the people. They give you this great 401k. And not only do they give you a great 401k, but then they screw you with fees that they don't have to tell you. And they're like, oh, great. Now they're making money from your pension, which is an unfortunate thing. So yeah, man, what next question is I have is, what would you do? What is something that it's not negotiable for you that you will always spend money on that?
Probably
food. Same.
Good food, like healthy food. I was going to say like something like travel, but that's negotiable if I got to cut things down, but like experiences with my family and stuff. But if I had to cut a lot of things out, I still wouldn't eat like hot dogs and mac and cheese every day. Ideally, right? I'd try to eat as healthy as possible. So probably that.
I think food is super important to me. And as of lately, you've seen a lot of the sunflower, canola oil movements. It's like, man, we got bamboozled, and it's in everything.
There's something to be said about American food. Like a lot of foreigners come over here and they're like, dude, I feel gross. Like the additives you guys put in your food versus what they do in Europe. I don't know how much. I don't know a lot about that.
I just
Americans are
I'm just trying it because I feel really good since I started trying it. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
but dude, this was great. I keep having all these like awesome people that you guys are brilliant and a lot to talk about. Do you have any closing comments? Do you want to tell your audience, my audience?
Yeah, just a couple rhetorical questions to leave your audience with. What is money and what gives it value? So if you understand that, you'll understand that there's been every currency in the world, every single one has failed. Every single one. So if you put a lot of faith and trust in your system, meaning the dollar, so did everybody else. A good book to read is When Money Dies about Weimar Germany. Which, by the way, led to the rise of Hitler. Hyperinflation was the groundwork for Hitler. So why that's important is no one saw it coming. So everyone's a conspiracy theorist until it comes true. And the cool thing about this, it's just math. So if you do the math, you're right.
Yep. I agree. And have you listened to a lot of Ray Dalio? He talks a lot about this, how, the last book of the Principles for a Changing World Order, which again, he has his alliances with China, but I think he's literally saying this. It's like, America, it's going to happen.
Yeah, he does.
Right? And maybe his alliances with China is part of his bailout plan, which do I fault it? No, it's his plan. He doesn't have to. I think that he believes in America, but he also believes in putting food in his mouth and live a comfortable life, So
yeah, I do tell people this to give them a little bit of hope, which I think this is why I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin. I would recommend people research that. But a free people will always beat a totalitarian government. Problem is we ain't free no more. We don't have a free market.
No.
And all you got to look at is the entire system has two sides, dollars and what you're purchasing, a good or a service. The price of money is fixed by the Federal Reserve. So one entity is controlling the price of money, which in a way controls the price of goods. Housing prices went up because the price of money went down, right? So we don't live in a free market. And so it's going to be very hard to compete with a totalitarian government like China because we're shooting ourselves in the foot, literally, as we're trying to compete with them because we're not a free and open market anymore. So the more we move to a free and open market, we're going to kick their ass if we're able to do that because American entrepreneurs are some of the best in the world. If you let them go, right? Their initiative is insane.
So true. Well, dude, this was awesome. And, dude, I look forward to talking to you more. And, dude, see you next week. So it's a great episode, guys. This podcast is not financial advice, and it only represents the opinions of those participating. Our goal is to get you to your version of financial independence. Please follow and like on every platform.